Hey YouTube, well it's Friday the 6th, so it's 30, looks like 34 out there, but that's probably because that thing's close to the house, so it's about freezing, and everything is frozen yet. You can see the ground is frozen out there this morning. Uh, Yesterday was 51 at this time, now today is 30 something. It's crazy this weather. It's supposed to snow today after 9 o'clock. But they're calling for half an inch, which is really nothing. But then they're calling for 2 inches tonight, which I don't know what's going to happen here. But that's what we're after. Well, YouTube, it's Friday afternoon, and you can see we had a snowfall there. So we got about 2 more inches of snow, but I don't know, it's supposed to snow tonight, but I don't know what it's going to do. So it's just one of those things. So there's no deer down here right now, but it's not all that late yet, and I'm expecting that they will probably come around. You can see we got a lot of snow sticking up there on the trees at this point. Friday, I believe it's the 6th of March. Hey YouTube, I wanted to share something with you. First of all, I don't have to tell you the weather. If you're watching the video, you've seen what the weather is here, and it's snowing right now slightly. And I'm not sure what's going to happen tonight with the snow, but anyway, I've been kind of dozing today a little bit this afternoon. But I have to tell you that, you know, a lot of times I get emails, I get messages, and I get all kinds of stuff with people asking me questions, and you know, sometimes they say they'd like to stop by or whatever, and I realize that some people are far away, you know, and I know what time is like. I have the same problem myself with time, but so a guy called me a couple months ago and says, you know, he'd like to stop by, that he doesn't live far from me. And I said, sure, you know, it sounded good to me, but it was, I think we were just getting into winter. Something, you know, sort of put it off for a later date. So yesterday then, my wife said to me that there was a phone call that someone wanted to come and visit. And I was waiting for the guy to call back, and he called back yesterday evening then, and I said, sure, to come over, you know. So he knew where the road was where I lived, and he was able to come over. And I have to tell you that it was a very nice meeting and a nice little get-together between him and I. My wife had to go into town for an appointment. And the guy was so pleasant and so nice that he brought coffee and donuts, which I thought was really a good thing. And I enjoyed it. And, you know, the thing about people our age is when we talk, we've gotten to the point where, and I've noticed this in a lot of people, but this guy in particular had this, which was good. You get to the point where, you know what, there's no sense in telling stories, there's no sense in trying to make yourself something better than you are. Just tell the story, because we know at our age, we've grown to the point that just the regular story is the fascinating thing about life. You know, we've managed to get through life to this age in our 60s, be able to understand what's about us and around us, and just try and enjoy whatever time we have left. A little bit of, you know, talking about our wives, a little bit of talking about our parents, a little bit of talking about the things that we learned and how we were raised as kids. And it's so funny because the guy did not come from the same area I came from necessarily. He did not work in construction like I did, but yet our the emotional things that brought us to where we are is what we have in common. So he was telling me some stories about what his parents taught him and what his dad said to him and things. And I was telling him the same things, and we're back and forth. And even though they were new stories to hear, they were pleasant to hear. Because my stories were totally different than his stories, but the meanings of the lesson was the same. And we both agreed that we know we're spoiling our kids because of the way we treat them. We know that. We've come to that conclusion. However, we also have tried to teach them in a way that's different than what we were taught. Now, we didn't get to go through a lot of this to determine whether we're right or wrong, but the point is that we talked about it and we recognized that. And I enjoyed the conversation. Plus, we talked about the sawmill, looked over the sawmill. He has a different brand of sawmill that looks very nice. You know, he sawmilled this past year, this past season, and got an opportunity to get the feel for it. So when I talked to the guy, because he does have a sawmill, because he did do work, you know, through his life and understood things, he was a farming community, it made it easier to talk to the person, because this way here, besides our upbringing being very similar in how our parents looked at stuff, it was also similar in the working that took place. And this is why I feel that, you know, young people are missing out on a lot by not putting their effort into hard work. Because hard work does something for you and to you. And the more you understand that, the better off life is. And I've seen a lot of people who had, you know, fairly easy jobs end up doing hard stuff in their old age. Not everybody, I'm just saying some. And they tend to have an appreciation for the work that they saw their parents doing. Whereas today, kids look at their parents and they don't seem to understand just how hard some of this work was. And then, you know, we look at our parents and we realize, wow, that's pretty hard. To give you an example of what I'm talking about here, I was watching a video, I think it's called World History. And this guy does a lot of videos about, you know, ancient time, or not ancient, but the times of the knights and stuff in England. And he did a little thing there, where a segment where he was using a scythe to cut grass. And the normal scythe guy would cut an acre a day. And he was saying he was wondering if he would be able to do that or whatever. So he started cutting, and what the funny part about it is, I'd say he went probably 30 feet or so, and he was doing pretty good. And I liked the guy's channel, but he was cutting, and all of a sudden he's like huffing and puffing, and I'm telling you, the guy's half my age. He looks like he's in good shape, but he was actually wore out. That's the answer to the question. You know, are we too easy on our children? Absolutely. It was harder. When I was a kid, you know, digging a garden was not one of these things where you go get the neighbor's rototiller and you dig your garden. We dug the garden with a pitchfork. I dig a garden with a pitchfork to this day. I wouldn't know how to do it any other way, so that's how I go about doing it. I've never used a rototiller. I'm not saying I couldn't get one, but you know, I just don't see the need for one at this point. So, you know, I was talking to the guy that came to visit, and in our conversation that came up. And, you know, he was agreeing with me, and this is the good thing. And it wasn't like he doesn't need me and I don't need him. We just had a good conversation, and I really enjoyed it. And, you know, that's the kind of things that life is about, where you get to I'm in the middle of nowhere, really. I don't see any new people unless I put an ad in the paper for lumber or something. And to have somebody come by and to find them to be very pleasant, very decent, you know, respectful of our home, for instance, or whatever, is very nice. It is nice. And it's the way people should be. not like we get today, kids pull in, oh, I got the parking space, rather than say the parking space should be for dad or the parking space should be for mom, giving a little bit of respect, they tend to, oh, well, I'm going to get that. And that's not how kids should have been raised. When I was a kid, and we were talking, this fella and I, we were raised to respect things, even other people. He was telling me about how he wanted to make some money to do things for the neighbors, so he started cutting grass. And after he got paid by someone, his mom made him give the money back. This is a very good lesson by this mother, because my dad actually had me do the same thing. Now, don't get me wrong, we were a business family, and we wanted to work to get money, and that's pretty much what we did do. But there were times, like for my grandmother, I would do work for my grandmother, and if my grandmother would make me, and my grandmother was fantastic at cooking stuff, if she'd make me a scrambled egg sandwich, I would be overjoyed. So that was worth any kind of money. She could have gave me $20, and at that time people would give you $1 or a quarter or 50 cents. Now it's, they want $10 and $15 and $25 to do something. And I'm just saying that I would rather have my grandmother's egg sandwich right now, I'm thinking about how good it was, than to have $100. That's just the way it is. And my other grandmother would make chicken and rice when I would go visit her and stuff. And I tell you, I miss that terribly. But this is a part of life. And we were sharing this lesson of life that we both learned. And it ended up being very nice. I can't thank him. His name is Jim. I can't thank Jim enough for coming up. I really enjoyed the conversation. And he's welcome anytime. And it's just a good way of doing things. I'm glad he took the step and had the courage to say, I think I want to go see this guy and just talk. Really felt good about the day, and he also felt good about the day, and I hope he did. And I'm just so thankful that people like that exist. It's hard to believe because, you're going into the store and somebody wants your parking space, somebody wants you to get to the food before you do, and people are always fighting one another, but here we didn't have that. It wasn't a matter of he's going to come here and show me how to sawmill, and I wasn't intending on showing him how to sawmill, just going to have a conversation. And it went that way. This is what I call a good day. I met somebody that I've never met before, lived a totally different life than I've lived, yet we ended up pretty much doing the same thing in the very end. And it's an amazing thing, it's a wonderful thing, and I would suggest that, people try and do things like that. It's just was a good day, that's all I can say. So, he had, when he was up here, I had to laugh. Right before he got in his truck to leave, in fact, he was in his truck ready to pull out, and he says to me, this is unbelievable up here, this is another world. Because, he's a little bit south of me, so they didn't have any snow. They were having rain. And, it was snowing here, and he was like, he couldn't believe it. But this is what it's like up on the top of this mountain. So, anyway, Jim, with all sincerity and all honesty, thank you for making the visit. I really enjoyed the day. Thanks a lot.